Hey everyone, it's Ross from Mythic Mountains Folk Tabletop Club. I want to try to do this thing again, just a casual conversation, just talk through things. I just posted a blog post that was a play report of I would call it a free Kriegspiel. Some people nowadays call them a Braunstein, but it's a unique way of playing a game that people are sort of rediscovering. Some people are, where it's similar to how Dave Arneson ran his tables when he introduced the idea of what would eventually become Dungeons and Dragons to Gary Gygax. And if you're familiar with that form of play, basically it was actually a war game, but you would have individual participants, each representing a faction, and you would have some means of creating a fog of war between the participants. Maybe a participant gets up and goes to a different room and talks in secret with a faction and then comes back, and a faction issues an order. And the referee takes all these orders and takes a look at them and then presents a result to the participants. And this creates this whole kind of poker game of kind of wondering what the factions are going to do and stuff. And it just, it's really fascinating. And there are a lot of people that are trying that out right now. People have been doing it for the past few years, and we wanted to give it a try. We wanted to try seeing what would happen if we informed our original Dungeons and Dragons setting with a war game. And to that end, I got this. This is Tony Bath's Ancient Wargaming. And that's the main thing I want to talk about. Now, right up front, how did it go? I made some mistakes. I didn't know what I was doing, so I was just trying it out. Really appreciate the players, the participants that were patient with me and let me experiment and try things out. We used this for the strategic level, and that's because for the war game level of original Dungeons and Dragons, of course, it has a game for that. And you can resolve large combats between armies, and we were using this. But what this does not tell you is if you wanted to march your army through freezing rain to a town that's 40 miles to the northeast, but one of the nobles in that town is undermining the town to try to provide you information. And you need to obtain in that town because it's a strategic center of gravity. It's set on a river with a major river crossing, and there's no way that your forces can afford to either ford the river in the winter or bridge build with the resources you have. So you have to take that town. Well, this isn't going to do all that. Now, what can you do? You could make it up, but people have been doing this since the 60s. And this book right here covers a lot of those things. Especially in the campaign section. But this right here is where the genius is. I know this is too small for you to be able to see, but just to kind of, and I'll settle on some figures here and things like that and tables. It tells you how to build the campaign world for a war game. And it does tell you how long does it take for an army to march? How will weather affect it? How will terrain affect it? This zooms out from Chainmail up to the near strategic or at least tactical level. And then it even has rules for like how would resources affect the economy, but also the ability to provide a supply train for an army. What happens when the supply train runs out? It provides some random events in the world. It has rules for intrigues of personalities like nobles and spies and anyways, this right here provided our tactical to strategic level of scope for that campaign and was the focus of gameplay. And by using that, we had these factions, and we did it all in Discord with play by post. I would post a like a group wide result, a report, and then I would also give individual reports once a week. And then they would take the report and they'd be like, well, what do you mean by this, Ross? Or can you clarify this on the map? And then, they'd ask questions to clarify things. And then I would do that and they'd say, okay, well, based on that information, this is what I want to do. And they would give me 1 or 2 paragraphs of an order for their forces. It could be individual units, personalities, ships, sending a message, trying to play politics, whatever it was. And I would take those individually. Those would be all done in secret by private message. I'd take all those orders, I would process them, and I'd go back to the map. If armies were moving, I would have that happen on the campaign map according to the time it was happening. The whole campaign happened in 1-for-1 time. That is to say that we would do it, we would issue an order on one day of a week, and then armies would act throughout the week based on those orders, and they would act out in sort of like in real time. Of course, the battle itself I would resolve on the spot on my own. I would notify the player, but the writer from that battle, if someone survived, they might not get there until the next week, etc. So it all played out 1-for-1 on this calendar, this fantasy calendar. It was a fascinating experience. I made a ton of mistakes. I got a lot of stuff wrong. There were a lot of resources. I will put them down in the description as well as the blog post where I go into more detail. This game is so cool. Even if you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons, I can easily see now how tons of people just still use this with original Dungeons and Dragons. In this tiny little book, there are tons of rules. We got into wizard duels. We had a wizard fight a Balrog. We had a fantasy chaos knight dueling an elf. We had whole armies fighting cavalry. We had what else did we have? We had a joust underwater with seahorses, and just it covers a lot of ground. And the really wild thing is, this is simple, and it's all back here in these charts. This right here is easier than Dungeons and Dragons. You have this chart up, particularly, let's say the easiest one is the fantasy table. Find that fantasy reference table. Fantasy combat table, right? So you've got a dragon and it's fighting an elemental. They roll 2d6, they get a 10, the elemental's dead. The end. You ever have that problem where you're just whiffing and whiffing? You're like trying to hit somebody with a d20 in Dungeons and Dragons and it just gets boring and you go back and forth and back and forth. You're not going to have that here. In Chainmail, everything is resolved really quick and it's cinematic. It's actually more cinematic. And anyways, it's really simple. You just look at the table, boop, and chuck some D6s. You get I have, I would have more than that in a regiment, but let's just say that I've got 5 Lightfoot. Okay, the Lightfoot kills 1 guy. Bam. And then you're moving on. All right, that Lightfoot killed 1 guy from the other unit. The other unit, let's say it's Lightfoot. The other Lightfoot unit, they kill on a 6, according to the chart, they kill nobody. Okay, so 2 Lightfoot units fought, one of them killed somebody, the other didn't. You're on to the next unit. Look how fast that was. And anyways, it's a Chainmail is just awesome. I basically just recommend it for anybody, whether you're into role-playing games or war games or anything. That was a lot of fun. If I had to do it again, I would be really clear on the guidelines of play. I would make a gazetteer, probably gather everybody together and chat about it, make sure all the expectations are the same. I kind of just threw them in there. We just kind of hopped right in and started playing. It worked out. I had a lot of fun, but and I think I hope the players did as well. Here's the thing. That setting now, Lioness, which is a part of our ongoing Otherworld living campaign world setting, which is this big, grand, original D&D setting. It's been going on for 3 years, more than one referee running part of the world in it. It's seen probably over 150 players. It's seen hundreds of sessions of play. It's a living world. And now we have new ways to make it even more alive and more realistic by engaging that strategic level and the tactical level and having the war game on in the background. How cool is that? Anyways, I'm really excited about it. I wanted to share that with you all. I suppose before I go, I don't have the hardcover with me, but a few other resources we did use. One of the tables from Adventurer Conqueror King Imperial Imprint. It has a table if you have to automate a party going into a dungeon. How specific is that? Of course, Adventurer Conqueror King is sort of the king of this scope of play kind of thing where you can be anything from a single adventurer all the way up to a king or a tyrant. That's sort of the thing that's out there right now. The other thing I did use, portions of our beloved Swords and Wizardry, which is the retro clone of original D&D that we use. A little show and tell here, I guess. And then for the campaign setting, it's set in a kind of a little bit of an off-brand version of Vance's Lioness. And to inform that, I got help from Gabor Lux's Echoes from Fomalhaut. And I just highly recommend his products too. I had all the basics I needed for this setting here. And then I was able to build up from there much more quickly. And all of it just fits perfectly into this classical style. This is actually the map of the area where they were fighting. And you can see I've worn it out too. It's seen so much use since I've gotten it. And then lastly, I don't have the hardcover with this on me, but it's the Isle of Payade. And that is the other resource for classical campaign content for that kind of 1974 role-playing Bat in the Attic. The content that he makes is just perfect for that. And it has all these details. Oftentimes he goes into a lot of detail, population numbers and terrain and weather and stuff like that, that creates that realism, almost simulationist kind of world if you're trying to go for that living world kind of gameplay. So anyways, I was excited to share that with you all and some show and tell some of the resources that I used to do that, especially Tony Bath's Ancient Wargaming by John Curry. And it's this group that's kept some of these practices alive. Of note, what's unique about this is not just that it's a war game, but it's clear when you read what, by the way, it's the History of Wargaming project, but the Society of Ancients. What a cool club name. And anyways, this is a group of people that focuses on wargaming in interesting, far-flung, distant past kind of ways, which I suppose Tony Bath did. He had a unique Hyborian setting set in the world of Conan. And when you read Tony Bath's description, you realize this was a sub-created world. This was a real world to him, or at least he treated it like it was real. He treated it with respect, with honesty, and that realism, that sense of something real coming up out of the world and just being presented and then allowing people to make choices. That kind of prefigures what we do in old school, classical tabletop role-playing, right? And how cool is that? So those are some things that I saw and some things I learned. I'll include links to everything down in the description. God bless, and I hope that's useful to you. Thanks.
Mythic Mountains RPG is a private online play club that focuses on folk RPGs. Folk RPGs are the games that belong to all of us. They're what actually happens at a table between friends. It's their voice that has the authority on what is fun and what works for them. Weekly, we upload our games to allow others to sit in with us. The channel isn't monetized. We don't own the artwork, music, software, or games shown in these actual plays, and you can find links to their authors in the description. Like, subscribe, and share if you wish, or don't. Just like games in person, you're welcome to pull up a chair, sit in, and watch some of our games. No performances, no fancy equipment, just regular people playing folk pencil and paper role-playing games and having a good time. We hope these games will prove a source of enjoyment to anyone just wanting to listen in, anyone looking for examples of how actual groups run and play folk RPGs, and most importantly, if you haven't found your group yet, you're welcome here at ours.